Guys, welcome to the podcast. Trace, nice to have you.
Yeah, good to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Ainsley, this is our first episode. We're going to co-host. Welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here and lots of great stuff to talk about today.
I'm going to just jump straight into the stuff to talk about, and I'm hearing a lot of marketers talk about inbound slowing down. I'm just going to go cut straight to it, you guys. And I've heard a few say it's dying. I'm not going to get into yet the debate, maybe later in the episode. But there are other things that are going much faster, which is my inbox, or by you all, the cold outreach. Holy crap. It feels like it's going exponentially. I just refresh, and it's another 20, 30 that coming in. So I think it's time to talk about how to spot signals from people we already know, how to take signals over volume. Trace, you're someone who cuts through the fluff and knows how to turn real conversations into results. That's the feeling I got from chatting with you. And Ainsley, you bring the marketer's brain and you kind of find the story in the chaos. You and I have had many conversations over the last few months and you just distill it down. So I want to talk about the state of inboxes, and the automation isn't solving anything for us at the moment. It's just increasing the noise. So Trace, let's start with you. State of the inbox. How's your inbox feeling?
Yeah, well, your every inbox, right? From my Gmail to my Outlook to my LinkedIn to any inbox you get, it's getting hit. Like you said, you can't refresh quick enough to have another one. And the sad part of it is like there's some people that are trying to be creative in whatever AI that they're using to catch your attention because you get what 3 seconds, but then you look into it and you'll see that it's super canned because there are fields that are missing or a previous client or customer's name that they forgot to remove and put yours in. So it's just one of those ones that's super impersonal right now, and it's just overwhelming.
And we can look at a lot of hacks, like make a mistake on purpose, punctuation, add a forward. There's all these creative solutions. Ainsley, is your inbox not experiencing the same thing, or it's right there with us?
No, right there with us, and I, feel like, from a marketer's perspective, you know, sometimes people are saying we need to cast a wider net, to be more effective. But from a marketer's standpoint, it just feels like there's just more and more noise in doing that. And there's already so much potential value sitting in our inboxes or, when we are doing outreach, but we're not really making use of, who we have in front of us, right? Like looking at the people that we have that are potential customers and like looking for those signals that could make them a potential great customer, making sure that we're communicating with them in the right way instead of just blanketing outreach or doing higher volume outreach. So there's definitely a huge need to be listening more to what those people need, what they want to hear, and not just, mass blasting out content constantly.
And there's so much of that, and there's so many more tools that are coming online for that top of funnel cold. It's nuts. How do you even decide which tool to consider? But let's just all agree. Whomever's listening in the audience, if you disagree, just go ahead and jump in with no. Cold email is the future. But it seems to me at this trajectory, if more tools come online and we're experiencing the same trend, at some point that inbox is going to be annihilated, and we're going to have to figure out how to shut the gates down, which will shut down some of the cold approaches. And we got to focus on the people who we already know. Right, I think there's an argument to be had, and I'll go to you, Trace, with this, but the argument is it's easier to do personalized cold than it is to personalize warm. What
Yep.
are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, like you said, I think the big thing is people don't even realize what their ICP is, right? So your ideal customer profile. And it's just like Ainsley said, cast a wide net and see what bites. And why, I guess the question becomes is why are we settling for 1% return, being a good metric, right? And like if you could get much more intentional and personal about the people that you already know, that you're seeing, that you scroll by their feed, you understand what they're consuming already, and you can kind of meet them where they're at, and you can bump your return up to 20% or better. Why would you not take the time to do that and land more leads and deals and actual conversations versus saying, well, I'm just going to plug this into HubSpot and hope the verbiage that I use hits a couple people here of the thousands of emails I'm going to blast today. It's lazy at a certain point, and we're just not taking the time to understand who our actual client profile is and it being in front of our face right now.
So I'll be not a contrarian, but I'm going to represent some of the feedback that I've received from folks that are listening when we get to this stage. It's hard to meet them where they are, like really hard. Trace, how do you do it? How do you think about it? And let's also clarify there is the state that we're living in now, and there's a agentic future that's coming our way pretty quickly. So we're going
Yeah.
to talk about what's possible. But how do you do that now? And let's kind of dive in because unless we say this hard, like we want to make this real for the listeners. Like we want to get to the essence of the thing.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to be real for the listeners, let's be honest, like us as humans are lazy. I mean, we're trying to make everything easier every single day. And like the honest truth of it is we're lazy and we want to hit the easy button on anything that we can. But if you're going to be successful and drive actual conversations, business that's going to be beneficial for you, you need to make things hard sometimes. Like the hard is what's going to drive the people that you need to be having conversations with. The way that I do this is honestly like taking the automation out of it. I think that there's definitely a point of the sales cycle and the revenue generating cycle that you need to automate and get into a funnel. But as far as client outreach goes, we're taking that out. And what we're doing now is meeting people where they're at. So let's talk about LinkedIn, for example. I'm not going to take credit for this because I've learned from some great social sellers online. And like, again, if you take the time, you can find these people who have proven strategies in place. But for me and my team, what we're doing is we're going towards our clients or the people that are ideal for us. And instead of sending them just a LinkedIn connection and then hitting them immediately with another, block of information that they're probably not going to read, we're sending a direct video message. Hey, I'm Trace. This is what I do. Like, set yourself up to be different and like let them know that you're a real person right away. Like, don't make it an instant sales pitch. Make it like, hey, here's who I am. This is what I see that you're doing online. Here's how I can meet you kind of where you're at. I'd love to have a conversation. Again, going back to those statistics, your cold email outreach is like 1% success. This method right here, like even just the direct message like grab your phone, record a message on LinkedIn, you're over 20%. Like, yeah, it's hard.
Wow,
It's harder. It takes a little bit.
20%.
It's harder. It takes a little bit of time. You feel vulnerable in doing it, but I can just scroll through my LinkedIn right now and show you responses from people like, this is awesome. Like, I love the video. Thanks for taking the time. And you get real conversation based off of that.
Can I
That's
just
incredible.
go ahead, Ansley.
I was just going to say, there's so much data out there that continues to grow just around when people are making purchasing decisions or partnership decisions, like trust really has to be at the core. And so when you look across industries, with varying levels of trust, like that's really where, the gaps lie too in, accelerating those sales or partnerships. And, with so much automation, like you're describing, like email outreach and everything, there's a huge loss of that, human touch and establishing that trust. So I love that you've been implementing that because it really literally puts a face behind the name
Yeah,
and like shows you're a real human. You're taking the time to create a video for that person to make that connection as much as you can in a virtual environment and show that you're not just blasting the same message out to everyone and treating them like the thousands of people on your list, but like taking that white glove touch with them and again just establishing that human connection because at the end of the day when people are making purchasing decisions or partnership decisions they want to know that they're going to trust that human that they're going to be
for
working
sure.
with and see there's a human behind the work.
Yeah.
Lead with humanity, because otherwise everyone's first, I think, instinct now is this AI? Was this done by AI?
Oh yeah.
So Trace, just to throw us in there, you basically got your phone open and you're saying,
Yeah.
hey, and you're like, hey, my name is Trace. This is what I do. I'm seeing you on LinkedIn. Like, walk us through
Yeah.
what's working for you to get to those. Like 20% sounds ludicrous, like the Tesla
It does,
speed
doesn't it?
mode.
It's crazy. And like I said, so the guy that I link with in this industry who does a great job, like I said, I'm not going to take credit for a system that I didn't create, but his name's Sims Tillerson. Hopefully he'll end up watching this. Great guy. If you guys haven't seen him, go visit his page. It's just that, right? First off, identify who your customers needs to be, right? Like make sure they're doing what you need them to do. Don't be the guy who just sends a message out and it's not even the right field of play. So send the LinkedIn connection and then let it sit for a minute once it gets received the next day. Like, so we're not going instantly because Same way, if Ainsley, if I sent you a connection request and the next thing you know, you accept it and then you had a message, it's just like, okay, I was waiting to get pitch slapped here, right?
Right.
So like
Yeah.
we're all waiting to get sold to instantly. So the next day, I literally have to pick up my phone and send a message and say, hey, this is Trace. We connected yesterday on LinkedIn. You know, I've noticed some of the things that you're doing in the space, X, Y, Z. I'm not really sure if you have a solution in place for what I do, but here's a little bit about me. Hey, I'd love to connect the next time you have a couple minutes. If not, appreciate the content that you're posting. I look forward to following the rest that you do. Click, it's over. Send it out into the inbox and then just kind of wait. But like I said, I can scroll through my LinkedIn right now and just go through pages and pages of people that respond to that and say, hey, thank you for taking the time and understanding like what I'm doing. I don't have a solution in place, and I'd love to find some time to connect. It's, again, it takes time, it takes some effort, it takes a little bit of creativity. For me, it's vulnerable. I'm not a big social media guy. Like I don't have, you know, Facebook and everything else, but again, it makes you a real person at the end of the day.
Oh, I'm not even going down the path. I hate social media, and I
Yeah,
have to do it now. And the podcast, people are like, how is it possible that you're doing this is what has to be done. Like, this is
yeah,
the
right.
best way for me to learn and to share. So what's the call to action there? Is just let's chat?
Yeah, so it's basically, let's see if this works for you, right? It's not like here's a hard sell on what I do and you need this. It's, hey, I don't know if you have a solution in place, but let me tell you a little bit about what I do and what I know about your, you know, who you represent. So we're an employee benefit. So I know that if I'm sending a message out to a broker, they're representing a self-funded client, and I know that they need a solution for this. So generally, I'll say, hey, I'm sure you already have a solution in place for specialty and brand products. A lot of people don't look at generics, and that's where I come in. So if you haven't thought about this, I'd really love to chat and get your thoughts on what I could probably do for some of your employer groups. And it's
Okay.
something pretty simple. It's not super hard. It's soft. It clicks with, you know, things that they're looking at every day, and hopefully gets them thinking a little bit.
Couple more questions here. I just can't shake the curiosity. One question would be, what role is the problem or your unique value proposition play in the videos that you're recording? How do you try to get to that? Like, this is the reason why to talk to you specifically.
So I put it in there kind of in the middle, right? Like, one, I want to thank them for connecting. You know, this is who I am. Just want to put a face to a name. I'll always lighten it up and say, hey, I don't want to be another message in your inbox, or I want to skip the direct email that's probably going to hit a pretty aggressive spam filter and you'll never ever see. But I'm Trace. Wanted you to hear my voice. You know, we connected because of this, and then, you know, here's what I know that you do. So I kind of make it soft and make it a real personal touch, and then say, hey, here's the problem we see employer groups having. Here's a solution we have that not many people have thought about. Let's talk about it.
Very cool. And then the last question is, how do you force yourself to do this? What's your discipline? Is this like on your calendar a certain amount of time, like a
It
workout?
is. Yep, it is. It's absolutely. It's so I block myself every single day. I have the reps that report to me, do the exact same thing. I say, hey, every day at a certain time, I want you to set at least an hour aside. And I want you to identify anywhere between 4 and 8 leads that you can connect with. And then the next day when they accept, you hit them up. So it's a rolling cycle. And you say, hey, once they accept, that starts day one. And in my sales process that we do, it's an about 11 step, you know, kind of through the cycle, which goes from connecting, then the video message. If they don't respond to that, you get in touch with some emails, some value added, like, you know, attachments there, and then I go back to LinkedIn and actually send like a voice follow up. So again, you're getting back in the email box, but with something different, and just stay on the cycle. But yeah, I mean, consistency and just setting the time up is absolutely key, because if not, you're not going to hold yourself accountable and say, hey, man, I didn't get a response yesterday. Is this actually working? Like, you got to just keep plugging away.
It's like a workout. Not every
Yep.
workout is going to be great. Not every workout gets you to where you want to be, but it's about creating a system to get
Yep.
you to success. Okay. Fascinating. Ainsley, any questions before we move on to the next topic?
No, I just love what you're doing. I think that makes so much sense, because you're putting the human first and putting who you are first, and just like valuing the introduction and the connection. So you're doing exactly what people should be doing, and establishing that trust from the upfront, because otherwise, why would they respond when there's a million
And
others
it's
out there doing the same thing?
And honestly, like, even if it's a no, like the amount of replies you get back and say, hey, I appreciate the video and the thought that you put into this, right now is not a good time. Like, eventually the link between that video and them remembering me if that time does come is going to be a lot higher than them just hitting delete on an email that came through that they're like, yeah, I don't need this right now. They're not going to remember that email. But if they see and hear my voice, then that time comes, you got a lot better shot.
You have perfectly set up where I'd love to take the conversation next, which is the middle of the funnel, right? So we basically, whatever we've done at the top of funnel, in your case, it is an email, it is a LinkedIn video, but there are other ways, website submission forms. A percentage, typically is 20% go from that into some level of conversation to what's next. That's cool. 80%. 80% are in this middle funnel. So we have an episode from the first episode of this season talked about it as the dead zone. They actually have Ashley called it Project Dead Zone. Others are talking about it as this is the leaking middle. I think Ainsley and I have agreed now that we think it's not fully broken, but it is leaking. The question is the extent of the leakage. So I like to go to a place where we'll piss off a bunch of people simultaneously. The question is who should own it? The middle. Because I've got so I want to go to you, Trace, first, then you, Ainsley, and then I'll wrap it up to make sure we piss off no one's going to be happy with the response. I haven't found a response where everyone's happy. So Trace, let's go to you. Who should own the middle?
Honestly, I think a lot of that comes to what the approach is with the middle, right? Like, is there actual intentional thought that's going out, or is it like, hey, we're going to do paid LinkedIn's and let that lie where it's going to be? Is it going to, again, there's so many different strategies that are in place, but I mean, I think that the best combination of the middle is you working directly as a sales team with your marketing team to say, okay, what's working and what's not, and who needs to own this, this step of the process and at what time. Because there's a lot of different people that design steps, right? Like I said, my team and I is 11. We make 11 points of contact with each individual person before we say, okay, they're out of the funnel now. Okay, there's a lot of room in there for us to play with marketing and say, okay, you guys take this one off my plate because they need to hear from my company's outbox or someone else other than my personal one, and like hopefully that gets them to click. So I think that there's a lot of flexibility within it. I think the problem has become that everyone wants to say, I either own it or it's not mine. Like, you guys need to take on more responsibility right now. So really just depending on situation, to me, to be honest with you.
Before you, Ainsley, I'm going to push back and just see how you respond. Because my pushback would be if multiple people own it or accountable for it, no one does. If you had to choose, is it sales or marketing? Because it feels a collaborative approach is good, but then how do you hold the KPIs and the metrics and the budgets, and it moves down the stream of questions? How would you address that?
Yeah, I think as long as there's an actual KPI or like metrics that are in place and actually being measured, that's another gap area where people put things in place and then they fail to actually measure against them and say who owned which part of the process and did it actually get done. There's a lot of fallout points there. I've seen it forever. So if that's the case and you're going to force one way or the other, I would still say as a salesperson and just being a competitor myself, I'm going to take ownership because in my opinion, like if I'm going to drive the sale, I need to be heavily involved from top to bottom and not have a gap period and then just say, well, it fell off in the middle and then I couldn't close the deal. But that's my answer.
I think we're delivering. We just pissed off one group of people. Let's go to Ainsley. Let's see who else we can piss off.
Yeah. Well, so, when I think about the leaky middle of the funnel, I'm thinking about, Trace, when you're talking about that 11-step process, like really like the bulk of people that perhaps haven't responded to some of the video messages you've sent, or when you followed up with emails or the voice note, like some of those that are sitting where there really hasn't been a one-to-one engagement with you quite yet. So I see it as, that leaky middle of the funnel where there's such a high volume of leads that have not necessarily responded yet, but they are a true ICP. That's where marketing really comes in and should own it, because they can really think about that content strategy for each individual ICP group, depending on type of company they're at, like where they're at, and potential for sale, to offer up strategic content that then will resonate with those respective groups and can do that at a higher volume. So I think it comes down to kind of, like you said, a more blanketed approach, but very targeted with catered content that will resonate with the respective audiences within that leaky funnel. Because I feel like from your perspective, like you said, as a salesperson, like there's a lot in there, especially if you're getting a lot of leads into the funnel, and like how are you supposed to really have ownership of all of that and be able to cater to each of them individually? So that's where I see marketing really owning that middle and being able to look with more of a strategic lens of like, where each of the leads in the leaky part of the funnel lies, for where, they can be best served content that could potentially get them to respond, or, be interested in having a conversation, and then, being able to then get it back to more of a one-to-one handoff with sales, taking it through to close.
And I'll double click on that and just wonder if the moment up until now, if you were to super simplify marketing to sales, it's marketing is one to many, sales is one to one. Would that be accurate, or is there a way to simplify it even further?
From my perspective as a marketer, that's kind of how I see it. When I think of the sales function, it is more, to your point, Trace, like that one-on-one, really like close communication and closing of the deal, once you've really like owned that relationship and owned that start to finish kind of building that relationship. Marketing's role is to really think about building awareness, getting key messages out there about the product or service, and really like building out that compelling story for why they should want to partner with you, and pick you over the competition that's also out there in their inbox.
I'm going to go and just share with you guys, like, what I'm hearing is every person from our sales side says that they would own Trace, exactly as you said. Spot on. Then we have this whole movement of marketers that are getting their budgets cut, questions being raised about their value. How are they contributing to the pipeline? And I think it depends on the size of the organization and the industry. There's no, I'm messing around about pissing people off, because it really just, it depends. There's also conversations I'm having where they're like, Adam, you're not even looking at the right titles. It's RevOps or marketing ops.
Yeah.
So let's just suspend who owns this thing, but let's go in a direction of what should be done in fixing the leak. We're not going to call a plumber. We understand it's one of those other titles. So Trace, when we think about, you have a lead that is not currently active, that's sitting in your CRM. We're talking about, let's not focus on volume. Let's get out of the trap. It's not about more.
Right.
It's getting in front of those folks. How do you think about signals in their world? What ideally would you want to monitor that then triggers for you to begin to engage them?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think we talked about this kind of in one of the pre-podcast conversations we had. Is like, I want to know what these people are consuming, right? Like, and it's hard. This goes back to the hard part, is like, I can see what people repost. I can see, what people like and all these different things. There's no perfect matrix right now that feeds that back to me and says, okay, here's your ICP. Here's exactly what this person looks at and when, and reposts or engages with, or whatever the case is. For me, it's understanding that that target to a T and when I need to engage them, right? And I think that's where marketing can come in and say, okay, if we are like have an actual pulse on this person, and we know that you're at X point in your sales cycle, but you're getting nowhere, and we're monitoring this person, how do we meet right here in the middle and say, this is the optimal time for us to hit them with a piece of marketing, or something on social media that comes through marketing, like I said, paid link, paid ad, or whatever the case may be, is like really understanding who's consuming what and when at what frequency, so that we can say, okay, now I know them, and this is where I have my best chance to get in there.
Yeah, I'll add that just from like a marketing perspective, I feel like oftentimes marketers are relying so heavily on like engagement metrics, like they're thinking about a big campaign, and performance of it. But sometimes, like when you're thinking about those leads that are in the funnel, it's leaking. Like sometimes the smallest signals when we're talking about that are the most valuable. Like if they clicked on a specific piece of content and a communication that went out, like that could indicate a behavior that means they're ready for a conversation. Looking at some of those more, tiny details of engagement that aren't like the big engagement metrics that marketers are always after to, demonstrate performance of a campaign, but like behavior shifts that you're seeing in how, those targets are interacting with the content, to, really figure out how to communicate with them best next.
Yeah, something I've experienced too in marketing, like now is great. Like we're a smaller company, we're private, but like I've worked with larger, publicly held companies. Like marketing gets hit with a lot of red tape that they have to consider too. And like timing is a big thing. Like if we used to ask for things when I was at a large public company, we wouldn't get a response or we wouldn't get what we need for 3, 4 months. And we're like, well, now it's too late. Like we needed
Right.
something then. And I mean, that's no fault of the marketing team, right? Like they have to dance around the red tape and know when they can act and when they can execute things too. And sales needs to be able to kind of adjust with that. But if you can't play in the, on the same timeline, it's going to be very difficult to meet those people in the middle of the funnel because you've already let time pass.
So let's just go into the future then, agentic future. I think we all agree AI. I spoke to someone earlier today, said I thought it was coming from my job, then I realized there's no choice. Now I got to embrace it. I thought it was the shortest story of AI that I think most of us would relate to. But I think then the next chapter of that story is agentic. And agentic is going to bring an entirely new level of capabilities that I don't think anyone, well, some people, Sam Altman, there's some folks that probably have a interesting view and see into the future. But most of us, I think, simplified digital employees that are going to have access to tools, ability to reason. So let's go into that future with this problem in mind, fixing the leak. So Trace, like if you had an AI agent or a technology, a tool in the future, and you're looking at this mid-funnel, you already began to talk about signals. Are they clicking? What behavior? Is it looking at their LinkedIn, job changes? How would you think? And then what does it do? Does it then look at the content that you have available? Walk through, if you had an assistant doing this to solve this problem, what would it do for you?
Yeah, and so I think first off, being in sales, it's got to marry into your CRM, right? And I think that's everyone's first step. They understand it's got to marry into your CRM, but I think kind of on the back end where Ainsley's at too is like the same signal needs to hit a sales team and a marketing team at the same time, right? So if you establish a sales cycle, you have your CRM and you have a middle of the funnel person. Okay, now we're monitoring whatever that they're consuming, and AI can read that for me and give me that intent or whatever each CRM would call it back in, and it's met at the same time as marketing to say, boom, that prompted you, or boom, that prompts sales, and we have a measurable outcome right there. And then if nothing is engaged upon, we go to the next step, right? Okay, where are they consuming it at, and who's it on right then to be able to understand what that behavior was and who should own that in the actual cycle of the sale itself. I think that kind of brings the two together the best right there between a sales like actual outreach or, something that is more marketing driven to where it's coming at getting our company's, information in front of their face in a more organic way. So I think as far as that goes, it's really say, okay, how do we ingest the information, push it through into the specific CRM tool, and then have that fed through at the exact moment to both the marketing team and the sales team and engaged upon to meet that metric.
Very cool. And what about other signals outside of consuming content? Is there LinkedIn, or do you want to monitor certain things on LinkedIn, on websites of the
Yeah,
lead?
honestly, yeah. I mean, honestly, if you can kind of in a perfect world get them to where if they're leaving a page and actually going to your company's page, I mean that right there, that action's huge. You want to make sure that you're catching them pretty quickly. But when I say content on LinkedIn, I mean everything from what they're viewing, who they're following, when they're engaging with a post, when they're reposting, and then anything outside of that. I think LinkedIn's become such a large space and a large social network that you'll see posts now that were frowned upon when, you didn't used to be able to put a happy birthday post on LinkedIn. And now it's like, hey, you need to post this stuff because people need to know who you are. Okay, well, I need to know that too as a salesperson if I'm actually going to be my authentic self. Like, I don't just want to know about your business all the time. A lot of the way you engage someone is through being an actual person. So how do we gauge that on the backside too to bring marketing in and say, okay, we've got this point of, data. How do we merge this together to get their attention now?
Ansley, what are your thoughts on signals?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're, so hugely important as we've been talking about because, from a blanket marketing perspective, it's generic brand messaging isn't going to resonate with everyone at the time they're consuming the content, and they may be looking for something really specific. So I feel like those signals are so crucial in identifying what content is going to best resonate with them. So, depending on like to your point, Trace, if they've clicked through to the site or maybe they had a big company announcement, like that opportunity to take those signals and hyper cater content to them that's relevant, that maybe acknowledges that moment and then has, a direct tie-in to the solutions that you're providing for them, or how you can, support them in a time of transition at a company, or, different moments that are happening for them. Those are just huge signals that are small but present a huge, like, unique content opportunity that could really, get someone to respond, get them interested in speaking with you, because you're taking, again, that human touch element to relate to them, not just hard sell, but actually give them something that's very specifically aligned with what they need in that moment. So, again, I think it just goes back to too, like, the signals can be the smallest things, but can be the biggest indicators of exactly what they need in that moment, and that's what ultimately then accelerates that close.
Yeah, I mean, so like going back, Ainsley made a lot of great points there. So think about it as a relationship, right? You're supposed to get the big things right. Like when you're married, you're supposed to get the big things right, but it's always the little things that mean the most, right? Like how do you keep tabs on those little things and meet them when they need to be met? Because that's what really drives, I mean, not only a marriage, relationship, whatever the case is, but throughout the life of a sale and bringing someone on as a client. Like, yeah, you're supposed to get the big things right. I'm in pharma, and I need to push the doctors. Okay, well, yeah, let me see what doctors, but like, okay, where's the little things that are going to kind of meet the objective there to where it's going to close the deal?
It's the little things, and also the idea that I don't think people. I heard this a couple of years ago that people can't listen until they're heard.
Hmm.
So, not if you're reaching out from your perspective and you're not starting with their perspective, there's this inherent resistance. And then once they see they've been heard, they're open to it. So, listen, where I'd like to go next is really just volume, not just from inboxes, but also from the technology. I don't know how you all are feeling it. I'm fatigued, and I think the almost the reality is it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. There's more. ChatGPT 5 just dropped. Okay, well, I gotta. That's my weekend, right? Figuring out what's the latest and what does that mean, and when is the next one coming, and how quickly are they evolving. So, Trace, just to you, how do you deal with the volume that's increasing across all aspects, including the technology that's coming online to help us do our jobs better?
It's it's tough because it's easy to say here's the next shiny thing and here's how it's going to make your job easier, but if you haven't mastered one thing, it's really hard to jump to the next, right? Like it's the same with sales. If you don't give something enough time for you to either A, be successful, or B, fail, and then like truly fail and move on. I think a lot of people perceive failure as being like, well, I tried it for a week and it didn't work. Who cares? That's not enough time. Like you got to really let that go. So I think as far as like everything that's being developed and coming into play is like it's great, but if you're going to try to chase that next step down all the time, you're not going to give yourself enough time to kind of figure out the base blocks and then say, okay, well, now let me build on top of that with this next feature. I think that's a big problem that's happening right now. I mean, myself included, just like you said, new chat GPT drop. Yeah, I want to see what bells and whistles are there. They're probably too advanced for me. I'm a sales guy for a reason. Like I'm good enough at talking to people, but I need to kind of stay in my swim lane. But I think actually giving ourselves the bandwidth to be patient is a big problem that we have too.
FOMO, constant FOMO. What if it's got that feature that everyone else is going to use and I'm not going to use?
Yeah.
And Ensley, what about you? How are you dealing with this volume of new things coming our way?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Trace said, and I think, it kind of just goes back to the need to really focus on like quality over quantity. Like when there are so many different tools at your fingertips, there's so many ways to automate. And when we're talking about sending, communications out to potential customers, like get more and more out there. But at the end of the day, you're just continuing to increase the quantity and not focusing on quality. And quality is so crucial. Again, just going back to that trust word for building trust. And one thing you said, Trace, that was really interesting to me too, is just about, where like the timeline of a relationship too. So even if you have a high volume of potential customers in the funnel, for example, you can't just look at all of those as one size fits all. There might be some that need a little bit more of like the dating time to build
Hmm.
that trust, and having that lens on which ones need that longer time to nurture to get to a close, and not looking at everything as just like a huge volume of potential opportunities, but instead looking at where they are in the life cycle and the potential to close with them if they're, given the proper time to be courted, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, it's more important to focus on, the tools and things that are giving that quality, establishing that trust, and like building that human connection along the way than just continuing to add more and more things that are increasing the volume of outreach and just making things more automated and less human. It's not gonna benefit anyone.
Yeah.
Humanity over volume. And I feel like we could do this all day, but I'm going to wrap up with one last question. I feel like if we had a few beers too, we just continue indefinitely. But let's leave the audience with maybe one piece of advice. We've already begun, which we talked about how to deal with the volume and patience and focusing on humanity. But Trace, one piece of advice for the audience as they continue their journey, especially around solving this leakage middle that seems to be the focus of a lot of our discussions.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the big point of mine today is just be different, be vulnerable. Like, everyone's going to try to do the same thing. I got a LinkedIn message the other day saying we can help you get your outbox up to like over 2,000 a day. I'm like, that's the opposite of what I want. Like, I don't, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
It's, take the time to be different, be vulnerable. Like, the worst that someone's going to tell you is no, right? Like, that's it. The worst thing someone's going to tell you is no. And we're so conceited like now to be like, well, they're thinking about how I messed up today or whatever. Like, no, they got done with you and they went on about their life. But just take that time to stand out and actually be thoughtful about who you're trying to engage and why. And I think that that's going to make the most difference in what the top, middle, bottom of your funnel actually looks like.
Gary Vee says it, I think, best. No one gives a blip about you.
Yeah.
Period. They've moved on with their days. So
Yeah, it's true.
Ainsley, what about you?
Yeah, I think just this conversation sparked so many, different things in my head, but I think at the core, it's, there's so many tools out there, right, to increase the volume, have more leads, and, there's so much rich data that lies right now in every funnel, no matter how leaky it is, how big it is, that is completely untapped, and really digging in and understanding each of the individuals that you have as potential customers and how they can be best communicated with. And Adam and I, as we've had conversations, continue to circle around this word of empathy. Like, you just need to communicate with empathy and be a human with people,
Yeah.
and think about how they want to be communicated with. And like, there's so much data to really understand how to do it for each lead that's sitting in your funnel or in your inbox that needs to be communicated with, that is a potential customer for you. So it's just about really like digging in and looking at what those unique needs are for each individual and finding ways to be able to communicate more effectively with that human empathetic element at scale.
Yeah.
How interesting, more AI, and we're now fighting for more of humanity to bring that into every aspect of our lives.
Yep.
And I don't think that's going to change. I think that's the kind of the dichotomy of what's to come. Trace, thank you. Ainsley, thank you both. And for those that are listening in, you've got a comment, a question, piece of feedback, or maybe you are disagreeing with something that we've said, drop it in the comments below and let's have a debate. So thank you, and over and out.
Thank you.
Thank you.